You know, in all my cycles serving as a tactical observer for the Galactic Combat Arena, I thought I had seen everything. I really did. The Kronar deathmatches, where warriors the size of cargo shuttles tore each other apart with their bare claws. The Velthian blade dancers, moving so fast they appeared as blurs of silver and blood. The Drakkor berserkers, who could shrug off plasma burns like insect bites. Yeah, I had seen it all. Or so I believed, until the day that tiny humans stepped into our arena and made fools of every single warrior we had. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because trust me, you are going to want to hear this. The Galactic Combat Arena is not just some backwater fighting pit. No, no, no. This is the premier testing ground for the galaxy's finest warriors, where species from 1,000 worlds send their champions to prove their worth. Victory here means contracts, prestige, fear, and respect. Lose here, and well, let's just say your species drops a few notches in the galactic pecking order. The tournaments happen once every solar cycle, and beings travel from across the sectors to watch. The betting alone generates enough credits to fund a small fleet. So when Earth, that little blue and green rock on the edge of the Orion Arm, requested entry for one of their fighters, Commander Throck nearly spat out his fermented kelp drink, laughing. I was there in the registration hall when she arrived. Commander Throck, our arena's head of security, a Valerian who stands 3 meters tall with exoskeleton plating that could deflect small arms fire, he looked down at his datapad and then at the entrance. We all did. The doors hissed open, and in walked this creature. Barely 1.7 meters tall. Slim build, no visible armor plating, no natural weapons, no extra limbs. Just pale skin, dark hair pulled back in some sort of functional knot, and these sharp blue eyes that seemed to calculate everything they landed on. She wore a simple black combat suit, nothing fancy, nothing intimidating. She looked like she would blow away in a stiff breeze. Throck's mandibles clicked in what I recognized as barely suppressed amusement. This is Earth's champion, he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. Did they send a juvenile by mistake? The human, apparently hearing him just fine despite Throck not even trying to lower his voice, turned and locked eyes with him. Lieutenant Keira Ross, she said, her voice calm and even. Earth Defense Forces, Special Operations Division. I am exactly who they sent. Oh, the laughter that erupted then. Karshak the Destroyer, a Bruton warrior with 4 arms, each capable of crushing steel, laughed so hard he had to lean against a support column. Vexra the Huntress, a Sithrak whose species had conquered 12 systems through martial prowess alone, made this hissing sound that was her people's version of mocking amusement. Even Zeph, a typically stoic Arkelian whose crystalline structure made him nearly indestructible, even he vibrated with what I can only describe as condescending humor. Keira Ross just stood there, unmoving, watching them all with those calculating eyes. Not embarrassed. Not angry. Just observing. Taking mental notes, maybe. That should have been our first clue, honestly. But we were too busy being amused by the absurdity of it all. A human. In the Galactic Combat Arena. Humans, who barely survived their own planet's hostile environment through sheer stubborn luck. Humans who had only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 centuries ago. Humans, who still fought each other over the most ridiculous things, like invisible lines on maps and ancient texts. And they sent this little slip of a thing to face our greatest warriors? The betting pools opened immediately, of course. I checked the odds out of professional curiosity. 50,000 to 1 against the human surviving even the first round. Some bookies were offering special bets on how quickly she would surrender or be carried out on a medical stretcher. One particularly cruel Zelthian was taking wagers on whether she would cry before or after the first hit landed. Credits poured in because this was going to be entertainment, pure and simple. A bit of comic relief before the real fights began. The tournament roster was announced that evening in the Great Hall. 16 fighters, single elimination format, combat until surrender or incapacitation. Standard arena, variable environmental controls, weapons permitted from approved lists or natural biological weapons. Keira Ross drew her first match against Drakkor the Unyielding, a Goranti warrior who stood 2.8 meters tall, weighed approximately 280 kilograms, and wore ceremonial bone armor that was really just his own naturally grown calcium deposits. Drakkor had won 43 consecutive arena matches across various circuits. His strategy was simple and brutally effective. Wade forward, absorb whatever his opponent threw at him, crush them. Subtle as a meteor strike, but devastatingly effective. I watched Keira's face when the matchup was announced. Nothing. No fear, no apprehension, just that same calculating look. She nodded once, as if confirming something to herself, and walked out. The other fighters were already talking, loud enough for her to hear, naturally. I will wager she does not land a single blow before Drakkor breaks her, Vexra hissed, her forked tongue tasting the air with anticipation. Breaks her? She will be past, Karshak boomed, all four arms flexing. The humans must have insulted someone important to send such a sacrifice. Zeph's crystalline voice chimed in, more thoughtful than the others. Perhaps this is some form of cultural ritual? An honorable death scenario. That got nods of agreement. That had to be it, right? Some weird human thing about dying with, what did they call it, honor or glory? Honestly, at that point, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But the arena is not a place for sentiment, and I had seen too many warriors fall to waste sympathy on someone who walked in with their eyes open. The first match began the next solar cycle at prime viewing time. The arena was packed, every tier filled with beings from across the known galaxy. The environmental controls were set to a standard, breathable atmosphere for most species, standard gravity, a simple circular arena floor with various obstacles and cover positions. Nothing fancy for the opening round. The crowd's noise was deafening, a mixture of cheers, roars, clicks, and whatever sound species made when excited for bloodsport. Drakkor entered first, as was traditional for the higher-ranked fighter. He raised his arms, and the crowd went absolutely wild. His bone armor gleamed under the arena lights, his small eyes glittered with confidence, and his mouth, filled with grinding teeth designed to pulverize plant matter and bone alike, opened in a roar that shook the lower tiers. He was magnificent, terrifying, exactly what audiences paid to see. Then Keira Ross entered from the opposite gate. The crowd's noise changed, laughter mixed with cheers, but mostly laughter. She looked even smaller in the vast arena space, surrounded by warriors and spectators who dwarfed her. She carried no visible weapons, no armor beyond her simple suit. She walked to her starting position with steady, measured steps, rolled her shoulders once, and looked across at Drakkor with those same calculating eyes. The arena master, a Vorthian whose booming voice required no artificial amplification, announced the rules. Combat until surrender or incapacitation. Lethal force permitted but not required. Fighters, acknowledge. Acknowledged. Drakkor's voice was an avalanche. Acknowledged, Keira said, so quiet that the audio pickups barely caught it. The starting tone sounded, a deep resonant gong that signaled the beginning of violence. Drakkor did exactly what everyone expected. He charged. Not some tactical approach, not a measured advance, just a straight-line charge designed to overwhelm his opponent through sheer momentum and mass. The arena floor shook with each thundering step. 280 kilograms of bone and muscle bearing down on a target that probably weighed 60 kilograms, soaking wet. It should have been over in seconds. Keira ran. Not backward, not to the side initially, but directly at Drakkor. The crowd gasped, myself included. What was she doing? Suicide by charging warrior? But then, 3 meters before collision, she dropped into a slide, her body going nearly horizontal as she passed directly between Drakkor's legs. Her hand came up, and I saw the glint of something small and metallic, and then she was past him, rolling back to her feet with fluid grace. Drakkor, momentum too great to stop instantly, crashed into the barrier wall behind where Keira had been standing. He spun around, confused, angry, ready to charge again. He took one step. Then his right leg collapsed under him. He looked down, surprised, and we all saw it. His knee joint, the one gap in his bone armor where flexibility required thinner material, was leaking blood. Not a lot, but enough. She had cut his tendon. The crowd went silent. Completely, utterly silent. That never happens in the arena. Drakkor roared in fury and pain, trying to stand on one leg, but Keira was already moving. She circled him, staying just out of reach, and every time he turned to track her, his weight shifted to that damaged leg, and he winced. She was not attacking, just making him move, making him hurt himself. After 30 seconds of this, Drakkor, stubborn as his species was known to be, finally tried another charge, hopping on one leg with terrifying speed. Keira sidestepped, grabbed his extended arm, and used his own momentum to redirect him face-first into the arena floor. The impact was spectacular. Dust and fragments of crushed stone flew up in a cloud. When it cleared, Drakkor was down, conscious but unable to rise effectively. Keira stood 3 meters away, that small blade still in her hand, not even breathing hard. "Surrender?" she asked, her voice carrying clearly in the shocked silence. Drakkor, to his credit, assessed his situation like a true warrior. One leg unusable, disoriented from the impact, opponent still fresh and clearly faster than anticipated. He slapped the ground twice, the universal signal for surrender. The crowd exploded. Not in cheers exactly, more in shocked exclamations and disbelief. The arena master announced Keira Ross as the victor, and the odds board went absolutely insane as bookies scrambled to adjust. The human had won. In under 2 minutes. Against a veteran arena fighter. By being faster, smarter, and targeting weaknesses that most opponents never even bothered to look for. I saw Commander Throck's expression shift from amusement to something else. Concern, maybe. Reassessment, definitely. The second match was scheduled for 2 days later, giving fighters time to rest and allowing the arena staff to repair the damage from the other bouts. Keira's next opponent was Sylthara the Swift, a Quelrian whose 6 limbs and segmented body allowed for incredible speed and flexibility. Sylthara fought with dual energy whips that could cut through most materials and deliver painful electrical shocks. She was known for overwhelming opponents with rapid strikes from multiple angles. Speed versus speed, and Sylthara had the reach advantage, the weapon advantage, and frankly the experience advantage. The odds shifted to 20,000 to 1. Still long, but less so than before. I watched Keira between matches, curious now despite myself. She did not train publicly, did not make speeches or threats like most fighters. She ate simple meals in her assigned quarters, did stretching exercises that looked almost meditative, and spent hours reviewing holographic recordings of her previous and upcoming opponents. Just watching, analyzing, thinking. That should have been our second clue. The match began with Sylthara immediately on the offensive, her whips cracking through the air with hypersonic speed, creating plasma trails. Keira dodged, rolled, ducked, and stayed mobile. For the first minute, she did not even attempt to counterattack, just evaded. The crowd grew restless, assuming she was simply delaying the inevitable. But I noticed something. Keira was leading Sylthara in a specific pattern, moving toward the arena center where one of the obstacles, a 3-meter-tall stone pillar, stood alone. When Keira reached the pillar, she finally stopped retreating. Sylthara, sensing victory, unleashed a flurry of strikes, both whips lashing out in a coordinated pattern designed to leave no escape route. Keira went up, jumping higher than should have been possible in standard gravity, catching the top of the pillar and swinging her body around it like some kind of acrobat. Both whips struck the pillar instead, the energy discharge cracking the stone and sending fragments flying. Before Sylthara could retract her weapons, Keira dropped down behind her, grabbed one of Sylthara's rear limbs, and yanked hard. The Quelrian's balance, dependent on careful coordination of all 6 limbs, collapsed. She went down in a tangle of limbs and whip cables. Keira was on her immediately, grabbing both whip handles where they connected to Sylthara's primary gripping limbs, and twisting them backward until the energy fields aimed at their own wielder. "Surrender?" Keira asked again, in that same calm voice. Sylthara's compound eyes widened, realizing that any struggle would result in self-electrocution. She clicked her mandibles twice. Surrender. Another victory, even faster than the first. The arena was in chaos now, the betting systems overwhelmed with beings trying to place new wagers, and the competitors' locker area went very quiet. Fighters were actually watching recording feeds of Keira's matches, studying her, trying to understand what they were dealing with. Karshak the Destroyer withdrew from the tournament, claiming a previously undisclosed injury. No one believed him, but no one blamed him either. Vexra the Huntress, when asked by arena journalists about the human, simply hissed and refused to comment. The third match, the semi-final round, paired Keira against Thex the Immovable, a Draxian whose entire evolutionary history was built around defense. Thex's hide was composed of overlapping crystal scales that could disperse energy weapons and turn aside most physical attacks. He fought with a massive hammer that weighed more than Keira's entire body. His strategy was simple: outlast his opponent's stamina, then crush them when they exhausted themselves against his defenses. He had never been knocked unconscious in the arena, not once in 73 matches. The odds were still against Keira, but now they were down to 1,000 to 1. Some beings were actually starting to bet on her. Madness. Absolute madness. This fight lasted longer, nearly 8 minutes, which was an eternity in arena time. Keira tried multiple approaches, strikes against joints, attempts to trip him, even grabbed a discarded weapon from a previous match and tried to use its energy output against his eyes. Nothing worked. The just kept coming, that hammer swinging in devastating arcs that cratered the arena floor when they missed. Keira was tiring, visibly now, her dodges coming a fraction slower, her breathing harder. The crowd sensed blood finally, and the noise reached a fever pitch. Then Keira did something unexpected. She stopped moving, stood still, and spoke directly to Thex, loud enough for the arena pickups to catch. "You are very well defended," she said, gasping slightly. "Best defense I have ever seen, actually. Must be exhausting, carrying all that weight around though, right? All those heavy scales, that massive hammer, constantly ready for the next threat. How much do you weigh anyway? 350? 400 kilograms. Thex, surprised at the conversation mid-combat, stopped his advance. 412 kilograms, he rumbled, pride evident in his voice. Keira nodded, like she was genuinely impressed. Incredible. And that hammer, what, another 80 kilograms? 92 actually, Thex corrected, hefting it slightly. Wow, Keira said, and I swear she smiled. That means you are carrying almost 500 kilograms of mass around this arena. In standard gravity. That takes incredible strength. But also incredible energy expenditure, right? How is your stamina holding up? Thex paused, and I saw it, the slight slump in his shoulders, the slower breathing. He had been fighting for 8 minutes, swinging that massive hammer, supporting his own weight, all while Keira had been making him chase her around the entire arena space. She had not been trying to hurt him. She had been making him tire himself out. "I can fight all day," Thex growled, but there was doubt now. "Can you though?" Keira asked, and she was not mocking, just genuinely asking. "Because I train in Earth's 1.0 gravity every single day, carrying maybe 10 kilograms of gear maximum. My stamina in this standard gravity environment? I can keep dodging for another hour, easy. But you are working so much harder than I am, just to move. So here is my question. Do you really want to keep doing this until you collapse from exhaustion? Because that is what is going to happen. Or, and hear me out, do you want to surrender now, save yourself the indignity of passing out from fatigue, and we both walk out of here conscious? Your call." The arena was dead silent again, everyone waiting for Thex's response. The big Draxian looked down at his hammer, then at Keira, then at the arena floor where his footprints had cracked the stone from sheer weight. He was thinking, really thinking, and you could almost see him doing the calculations. More fighting meant more exhaustion, meant eventual collapse, meant defeat anyway. Fighting a smaller, faster opponent who now knew his only real weakness, stamina. Thex lowered his hammer, planted it head down into the arena floor, and stepped back, hands raised. "You fight with your mind, not your body," he said, respect clear in his voice. "Earth's warrior wins through wisdom. I surrender." The crowd went absolutely berserk. A voluntary surrender, from Thex the immovable to a human, based on a conversation. No one had ever talked an opponent into surrendering before, not in the arena's 300-cycle history. That left only the final match, the championship bout, scheduled for the next prime viewing period to allow maximum audience anticipation to build. Keira's opponent would be Zeph, the crystalline Archelian who many considered the most dangerous fighter in the tournament. Zeph's body was composed of a living crystal matrix, nearly indestructible, capable of reshaping his limbs into blades or hammers at will, and possessing strength that rivaled the strongest species. He also had no obvious weaknesses, no joints to cut, no stamina to exhaust, no psychological buttons to push. He was just an implacable, adaptable fighting machine wrapped in a nearly invulnerable shell. The championship match drew the largest crowd in arena history. Beings paid premium credits for viewing positions, overflow crowds watched on screens throughout the station, and the betting pools reached numbers that made even the bookies nervous. The odds on Keira had dropped to 30-1, which was absurd considering she was facing Zeph, but 3 consecutive victories had earned her believers. Still, most experts predicted this was where the human's luck ran out. I found myself in an odd position, actually hoping she would win. This human, this tiny, fragile-looking being from an unremarkable world, she had made fools of our greatest warriors without brutality, without cruelty, just by being smarter. She deserved to win, and that thought, coming from me, who had spent decades watching and analyzing combat, that thought alone told me how much things had shifted. The championship bout began with full ceremony, lights, announcements, the works. Zeph entered with his characteristic calm, his crystalline body refracting the arena lights into rainbow patterns across the crowd. He reshaped one arm into a long blade, the other into a shield, standard configuration for him. He took his position and waited, patient, eternal. Keira entered to actual cheers, mixed with the usual noise, but real cheers from beings who had bet on her or simply wanted to see the impossible happen. She looked tired now, 3 fights in less than a week, against opponents that would terrify most species' best warriors, but her eyes still held that calculating look. She took her position, and this time, she spoke first. Zeph, before we start, I want to say, I have studied your previous matches, and you are incredible. Probably the most perfectly adapted fighter I have ever seen. I am legitimately not sure I can beat you in a straight fight. Zeph's crystalline voice chimed, curious. This is an unusual opening statement, Lieutenant Ross. Yeah, well, honesty seemed appropriate, Keira said, and she actually laughed a little, short and sharp. Here is the thing, though, I do not need to beat you in a straight fight. I just need to win. And there is more than one way to do that, right? Explain, Zeph said, intrigued despite himself. Combat until surrender or incapacitation, those are the rules, Keira said. You cannot be incapacitated easily, I get that, your physiology makes you nearly invulnerable. But surrender, that is a choice. A decision based on logic and assessment. And you are a logical being, Zeph. I have watched you fight, you make smart, tactical decisions. So here is what I am thinking, instead of us beating on each other for 20 minutes until I eventually make a mistake and you shatter my bones, how about we test each other differently? The crowd was confused, murmuring, unsure where this was going. Honestly, I was confused too. What do you propose? Zeph asked, lowering his blade arm slightly. A contest of adaptability and problem-solving, Keira said, gaining confidence. You reshape your body, right? Complex crystalline matrix reconstruction on the fly. Impressive. I am betting that takes concentration, planning, and mental effort. So, how about this? We both attempt to complete a challenge using only what is available in this arena, no direct combat, and whoever completes it first wins. Loser surrenders. What challenge? Zeph asked. Keira pointed to the arena's upper tier, where a championship banner hung from the ceiling, at least 15 meters above the arena floor. First one to retrieve that banner and return it to the center circle wins. You can reshape yourself however you need to. I will use whatever I can find. Deal. The arena master's voice boomed out, confused. This is highly irregular. Rules say combat until surrender or incapacitation, Keira called up to him. They do not specify the form that combat takes. And if Zeph agrees, it is a mutual challenge. That is allowed under arena law, subsection 47, I checked. I checked too, pulling up the regulations on my datapad, and damn it, she was right, there was a clause allowing mutual challenges if both fighters agreed. It had never been used, not once, but it existed. Zeph was silent for a long moment, his crystalline body vibrating with what might have been thought processes. Then he chimed something that might have been laughter. You continue to surprise me, Lieutenant Ross. Very well, I accept your challenge. You understand that I can simply grow extensions and reach that banner in seconds. I understand you will try, Keira said, grinning now. I am betting I will be faster though. The arena master, after consulting with officials, allowed it, mostly because the crowd was going wild with anticipation, and the betting pools were exploding with beings trying to place wagers on this bizarre contest. The tone sounded, and both fighters moved immediately. Zeph, as predicted, began reshaping his body, growing tendrils and extensions upward, crystalline structures extending toward the banner. It was mesmerizing to watch, his body flowing and changing like liquid crystal, reaching higher and higher. Keira ran, but not toward the banner, toward the obstacle structures scattered around the arena. She grabbed a piece of broken stone from an earlier match, some metal fragments, and what looked like part of an energy whip cable, possibly from her own fight with Sylthara. Her hands moved with incredible speed, tying, wrapping, constructing something. Within 30 seconds, she had created a crude but functional grappling hook attached to the cable. Zeph's crystal extensions reached halfway to the banner, growing steadily. Keira ran to the base of the pillar she had used in her earlier fight, the same 3-meter-tall stone structure, and started climbing, using cracks and breaks in the stone as handholds. She reached the top just as Zeph's extensions reached 3/4 of the way to the banner. She stood on the pillar, whirled her makeshift grappling hook twice, and threw it upward with everything she had. The hook caught on the ceiling support beam, right next to where the banner hung. Keira tugged once to test it, then literally jumped off the pillar, swinging out over the arena floor in an arc, using her momentum to carry her upward. At the peak of the swing, she let go with one hand, grabbed the banner with the other, yanked it free, and dropped. She fell at least 8 meters, tucked into a roll as she hit the arena floor, tumbled twice, came up running, and sprinted for the center circle. Zeph's extensions were still growing upward, just reaching where the banner had been, but finding nothing there. Keira slid into the center circle like a runner stealing base, holding the banner above her head. "Got it!" she yelled, breathless and laughing. The crowd absolutely erupted. The noise was beyond deafening, it was reality-altering, every being in the arena and watching remotely losing their collective minds. Keira Ross, the tiny human from Earth, had just outthought, outmaneuvered, and outsmarted the galaxy's finest warrior in a contest of his own acceptance. Zeph retracted his extensions, reformed into his standard body shape, and approached the center circle. He looked down at Keira, who was still sitting on the arena floor, gasping for breath, holding that banner like a prize. His crystalline voice was warm, amused, and respectful. "You are absolutely insane, Lieutenant Ross." "Gets the job done, though," Keira managed between breaths. "Indeed it does," Zeph agreed, and then he did something I had never seen him do. He bowed a full formal bow of respect from a superior to an equal. "I surrender to your superior tactics, creativity, and frankly, your audacity. Earth's champion is worthy of the title." The arena master, after several false starts because his voice kept breaking with shock, officially declared Keira Ross the tournament champion. The crowd's noise somehow got even louder, which I had not thought physically possible. I made my way down to the arena floor afterward, using my observer credentials to get past security. Commander Drakkor was already there, his massive form standing before Keira, who still sat on the arena floor, looking exhausted but satisfied. Other fighters had gathered too, Drakkor on crutches, Sylthara clicking respectfully, Thex leaning on his hammer, all of them looking at this human with new eyes. "How?" Drakkor asked, his voice sincere, not mocking anymore. "How did you defeat warriors that should have crushed you?" Keira looked up at him, then around at all the gathered beings, and she smiled, tired but genuine. "You all assumed that because I am small, I am weak. Because I have no natural armor, I am fragile. Because humans are young to the galactic stage, we are naive. But here is the thing, we come from a planet that tried to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans, everything was a threat. So we learned. We learned to think, to adapt, to use tools, to find advantages where none existed. You are all stronger than me, tougher than me, more experienced than me. But I have spent my entire life figuring out how to beat things that were bigger and stronger than me. That is the human advantage, Commander. We do not give up, and we always find a way." The gathered warriors absorbed this, processing the implications, realizing that Earth's military forces, if they all thought like this, were far more dangerous than anyone had assumed. Keira stood up slowly, wincing slightly from bruises and exhaustion. She extended her hand to Drakkor, a human gesture. He looked at it, then carefully took it with 2 fingers, since his full hand would have crushed hers. "Good fights," she said simply. "Good fights," Thrak agreed, and I heard respect in his voice for the first time when speaking about a human. As I watched Keira Ross limp toward the medical station, championship banner still clutched in one hand, victory recorded in arena history, I realized something important. We had all been looking at humanity wrong. We saw their size, their fragility, their youth as a species, and assumed weakness. We never considered that surviving on a death world without natural weapons or armor might have given them something far more valuable, a mind that never stopped analyzing, adapting, and finding solutions. They were not the weakest species in the galaxy. They were potentially the most dangerous because they won fights before the fighting even started. The betting houses paid out their winnings to the few being smart enough to bet on Keira in that final match, creating several instant millionaires. The arena officials added a new rule for future tournaments. All challenges must be specified in advance to prevent similar tactical surprises. And Earth's status in the galactic military rankings jumped 17 positions overnight, because if one human could do this, what could an entire army of them accomplish? I filed my observer report that evening, and for the first time in my career, I added a personal note to the official record. Recommend treating Earth and its inhabitants as a Tier 1 potential military threat, not due to superior technology or physical capability, but due to tactical creativity and adaptive problem-solving abilities that exceed any species currently on record. Do not underestimate them. We did, and they made us look like fools. Yeah, they laughed at her size in the arena. Right up until she outsmarted their entire fighting force. And you know what the best part was? She was just one human, one fighter, one example of what Earth could produce. Makes you wonder what else they are hiding on that little blue planet, does it not? Makes you wonder, and honestly, makes you a little bit nervous. As it should. Because Lieutenant Keira Ross taught us all a valuable lesson that day. Never, ever judge a warrior by their size. Judge them by what they do when everyone assumes they cannot win. And humans? When you assume they cannot win, that is when they are most dangerous.